"We don't do loitering here, ma'am." The words sliced clean through the polished silence of the dealership showroom, sharp enough to turn heads without anyone raising their voice. Vanessa Brooks looked up slowly from the black leather chair near the espresso station, her fingers still wrapped around the paper coffee cup that had already gone cold. Around her, sunlight poured through 40-foot glass windows, reflecting across polished marble floors and the chrome bodies of luxury SUVs lined up like trophies. Somewhere near the service department, an air compressor hissed. Soft jazz drifted through hidden ceiling speakers. Everything in the building felt expensive except the way people were being treated. Travis Cole adjusted the cuff of his tailored navy suit and offered the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "The customer lounge is reserved for active buyers," he said calmly, though the irritation underneath was impossible to miss. Vanessa sat quietly for another second, taking him in. Mid-50s. Silver watch. Perfect haircut. Dealer-issued confidence. He had the posture of a man who believed he owned every room he entered. "I was waiting for assistance," Vanessa replied softly. Travis glanced at the old gray sedan parked outside near the edge of the lot. Its faded paint and dented bumper stood out among the rows of gleaming Escalades and imported luxury models. His gaze drifted back to her hoodie, then to the worn sneakers beneath her chair. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said. "This dealership specializes in premium clientele." A few nearby salesmen chuckled under their breath while pretending to study inventory sheets. One of them, a tall blonde salesman with slicked-back hair, leaned against a white SUV and whispered something that made another employee laugh harder. Vanessa noticed the receptionist behind the counter glance downward uncomfortably before returning to her computer screen. No one stepped in. No one challenged him. Outside, a family of three walked slowly across the lot toward the showroom entrance. A black couple, maybe early 30s, holding hands with a little girl wearing pink sneakers that lit up every time she stepped forward. The father carried a folded printout from the website, smiling nervously like someone trying hard not to appear intimidated. Travis noticed them immediately. His expression tightened almost invisibly. One salesman muttered, "Credit score convention just rolled in." Another snorted quietly. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but her face remained calm. She watched as the couple entered through the sliding glass doors and paused beneath the towering dealership logo hanging from the ceiling. The little girl stared wide-eyed at a pearl-white SUV positioned on a rotating platform under spotlights. "Daddy, look," she whispered excitedly. "That one's pretty." But no salesperson approached them. Two salesmen standing near the finance office turned away the moment the family walked in, pretending to discuss paperwork instead. Another employee passed within a few feet of them carrying bottled water to a wealthy older couple seated near Travis's office. The contrast was impossible to miss. The mother gently squeezed her husband's hand as if silently preparing herself for disappointment before anyone had even spoken. Vanessa slowly set her coffee cup down on the glass table beside her. The showroom lights reflected across the dark lenses of the security cameras mounted high in the corners. She already knew what the audit report said. Customer complaints, employee turnover, lawsuits quietly settled before reaching court. But sitting inside the building now, hearing the laughter with her own ears, watching the invisible lines people drew between human beings in real time, felt different. Colder. More personal. Across the showroom floor, the little girl tugged on her father's sleeve again. "Can we sit in it?" she asked softly, pointing toward the white SUV. Before he could answer, one salesman looked over and sighed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Those vehicles start at 92 grand," he said without even walking over. "Just so nobody wastes their afternoon." Silence spread across the marble floor like spilled water. Vanessa looked up slowly, and for the first time that morning, something in her eyes changed. The salesman's smile faded the moment Vanessa stood up from the leather chair. Not dramatic, not angry, just deliberate, like someone finally deciding they had seen enough. Across the showroom floor, the young father lowered the printed vehicle listing in his hands, embarrassment slowly creeping across his face while his daughter stared silently at the white SUV spinning beneath the lights. The mother kept her shoulders straight, but Vanessa recognized the look in her eyes immediately. It was the look of someone preparing to leave before being humiliated further. Travis adjusted his tie and turned toward the family with practiced impatience. "Sir, if you would like financing information, Applications are handled online first. The man blinked. I already filled it out online, he said carefully. I got an appointment confirmation this morning. One of the salesmen near the finance office glanced at the computer screen and smirked. Marcus Reed, he asked. Application flagged. He said it loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. Probably needs a cosigner. The little girl looked up at her father. What is a cosigner? She asked innocently. Marcus forced a smile that looked painful around the edges. Nothing you need to worry about, baby. Vanessa watched Travis closely. No correction, no professionalism, just silence that quietly approved the humiliation happening in front of everyone. The giant showroom windows reflected the entire scene back, like a mirror nobody wanted to look into. Then another voice cut through the tension. Sir, I can still show them the vehicle. Everyone turned. Emily Carter stood near the reception desk, clutching a tablet against her chest. Young, nervous, maybe 24. Her blonde hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and unlike everyone else in the building, she looked uncomfortable with what was happening. Travis exhaled sharply through his nose. Emily, he said, warning hidden beneath the calmness in his voice. They have an appointment, she said softly, and the touring package they asked about is still available. One salesman rolled his eyes dramatically and walked away toward the coffee station. Another muttered, waste of commission. Vanessa noticed Harold Bennett near the service hallway entrance, pushing a yellow cleaning cart slowly across the marble floor. The old janitor paused when he heard the exchange. Deep lines marked his face, and silver curls framed the edges of his maintenance cap. He looked toward Marcus and his family with quiet sympathy before glancing at Vanessa for half a second longer than expected, almost like he sensed something underneath the hoodie and silence. Travis forced a thin smile toward the family. We prefer to focus our staff on serious buyers during peak hours. Marcus nodded slowly, the humiliation now impossible to hide. I understand, he said quietly. But his daughter did not understand. Daddy, are we leaving? She whispered. Vanessa felt something cold settle deep in her chest. Not anger exactly. Worse, disappointment. The kind that arrives after hope finally runs out. She looked around the showroom again. Crystal light fixtures, imported Italian tile, floor-to-ceiling digital displays cycling luxury commercials across giant screens. Millions of dollars spent building a place designed to feel exclusive, yet somehow the room still felt small. Emily stepped forward despite the tension tightening around her. I can grab the keys, she offered carefully. Travis finally snapped his attention toward her fully. You are a receptionist, he said flatly. Not sales staff. The words landed harder than he intended. Emily's face flushed immediately. Harold lowered his eyes and quietly resumed mopping near the corridor, though Vanessa noticed his grip tighten around the mop handle. Outside, clouds slowly drifted over the Texas sun, dimming the bright reflections dancing across the glass walls. And standing there in the middle of her own dealership, Vanessa Brooks realized the problem was no longer poor management. It was culture, rot hidden beneath polished surfaces. The silence inside the showroom lingered several seconds too long after Travis shut Emily down. Customers nearby pretended not to stare, but Vanessa could feel the tension moving through the building like static electricity before a storm. Marcus Reed folded the printed vehicle sheet carefully and slipped it back into his jacket pocket, while his wife lowered her eyes toward the marble floor. Their daughter still stared at the white SUV turning slowly beneath the spotlight, her excitement fading 1 second at a time. Vanessa stepped away from the leather chair at last. Her sneakers echoed softly against the polished tile as she crossed toward the family. Immediately, 2 salesmen exchanged irritated looks. Travis watched her closely now, suspicion beginning to replace arrogance. Sir, Vanessa said calmly to Marcus. Which model were you hoping to see? Marcus hesitated before answering, almost like he expected another joke to follow. The Aspen Touring Edition, he said quietly. We saved for 2 years. His wife forced a faint smile beside him. Our old minivan finally died last month. Vanessa nodded once. Good choice. One salesman scoffed under his breath. If they can afford it. Harold Bennett paused again near the service hallway, his mop bucket wheels squeaking softly against the tile. He looked toward Vanessa carefully now, studying the way she carried herself. Calm, controlled, unshaken. It did not match the image the staff had already decided for her. Travis stepped forward before the conversation could continue. Ma'am, I already explained the situation. Vanessa turned toward him slowly. No, she replied. You explained your assumptions. The nearby showroom chatter dimmed almost immediately. Even the finance manager standing near the glass office looked up from his paperwork. Travis forced another tight smile, though the edges of his patience were beginning to crack. This is a luxury dealership, he said. Our staff cannot spend 45 minutes entertaining every walk-in visitor who cannot qualify for financing. The little girl tightened her grip on her mother's hand. Marcus swallowed hard but kept his voice respectful. I already received a pre-approval email. Emily quietly turned her computer monitor slightly and looked toward Travis nervously. He actually did, she admitted. Tier 1 approval. One of the salesmen blinked in surprise. Another straightened awkwardly near the coffee station. Travis's jaw tightened almost invisibly. There are additional verification factors, he said quickly. Vanessa looked directly at him now. Such as, Travis folded his arms. Debt-to-income ratios. Employment consistency. Long-term risk assessment. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. Interesting, she said softly. Because none of those were mentioned before your staff saw them walk through the door. The words landed with enough weight to make the room noticeably quieter. Near the front windows, an older white couple pretending to browse vehicles slowly stopped listening to their salesman entirely. Emily stared down at her desk, uncomfortable but unable to deny what was happening anymore. Travis let out a slow breath through his nose. I think it would be best if you left, he said finally. Excuse me? Vanessa asked. You are disrupting business operations. Vanessa almost smiled at that. Almost. Outside, thunder rolled faintly somewhere beyond the dealership lot as dark clouds drifted across the afternoon sky. The bright reflections inside the showroom dimmed into softer gray tones. Harold leaned the mop carefully against the wall and stepped closer for the first time. Sir, he said gently toward Travis, they are not hurting anybody. Travis turned sharply. Harold, stay in your lane. The old janitor lowered his eyes immediately, but Vanessa caught the exhaustion on his face. Not fear. Exhaustion. The kind built over years of swallowing disrespect because rent still had to be paid every month. Vanessa looked around the showroom one more time. Luxury watches. Pressed suits. Smiling advertisements glowing across digital screens promising excellence and trust. Yet somehow the only people acting human in the entire building were a receptionist barely making $20 an hour and a janitor pushing a mop bucket older than some employees working there. And standing beneath the cold white lights of her own dealership, Vanessa Brooks realized exactly how deep the rot had spread. Rain began tapping softly against the massive showroom windows, turning the bright Texas afternoon into a wash of silver-gray reflections across the marble floor. Nobody moved for several seconds after Travis told Vanessa to leave. The silence felt strange now. Heavy, like the building itself knew something had shifted. Marcus Reed cleared his throat quietly and placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. Come on, baby, he said gently. We should go. The little girl looked back one last time at the white SUV rotating beneath the lights. But you promised we would sit inside one today, she whispered. The words landed harder than anyone expected. Even one of the younger salesmen near the service desk looked away uncomfortably. Vanessa watched Marcus force another tired smile for his daughter while his wife rubbed small circles against the child's back. Years of saving, months of planning, and now humiliation wrapped neatly inside polite corporate language. Travis checked his watch impatiently. Thank you for understanding, he said, already turning away like the conversation no longer deserved his attention. That was the moment Vanessa stepped forward. Calm, measured, unshaken. No, she said softly. Travis stopped mid-step. Vanessa looked directly at Marcus and his family. Do not leave. The room went completely still again. Rain streaked slowly down the giant glass windows behind them while the overhead chandelier lights reflected against the polished hoods of 20 luxury vehicles lined across the showroom floor. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low across the city. Travis turned slowly, disbelief flashing across his face. Excuse me. Vanessa folded her hands calmly in front of her hoodie. They came here in good faith. They deserve to be treated with respect. One salesman laughed nervously. Lady, you do not even work here. Vanessa ignored him completely. Instead, She walked toward the rotating white SUV with slow, deliberate steps. Her worn sneakers squeaked faintly against the marble tile while employees watched in growing confusion. Marcus looked frozen beside his wife. Emily stood behind the reception desk, clutching her tablet tighter now, her pulse practically visible in her throat. Vanessa stopped beside the vehicle and gently rested her fingers against the polished door handle. Aspen Touring Edition, she said quietly. 300 horsepower. Third row seating. Adaptive safety package. Excellent crash rating for families. Travis narrowed his eyes. How would you know that? Vanessa looked back at him. Because unlike your sales team, I actually studied the product before walking into this building. A few nearby customers glanced at each other awkwardly. The tension inside the dealership had shifted from uncomfortable to dangerous. Travis straightened his suit jacket slowly. Security, he called toward the front entrance. Two security guards near the glass doors immediately looked up from their station. Harold Bennett's shoulders sank the moment he heard the word. Emily's face drained of color. Marcus instinctively stepped closer to his wife and daughter. But Vanessa did not move. Not even an inch. One security guard approached carefully, clearly uncertain about what exactly the threat was supposed to be. Vanessa turned her gaze toward him before he could speak. Before you escort anyone out, she said calmly, I would like to ask one question. The guard hesitated. Travis folded his arms tightly. This is not a debate. Vanessa nodded once. You are right, she replied softly. It is not. She looked slowly across the entire showroom now. At the salesman pretending confidence. At the finance managers suddenly avoiding eye contact. At the receptionist too nervous to speak. At Harold standing quietly beside his old mop bucket under the fluorescent hallway lights. Then she asked the question anyway. How many customers have walked out of this dealership feeling smaller than when they walked in? Nobody answered. Not because they did not know. Because they did. Outside, rainwater rolled down the glass in long silver lines while thunder echoed again across the darkening sky. And for the first time since Vanessa Brooks had entered the building that morning, Travis Cole looked less like a man in control and more like someone standing on ice that had just started cracking beneath his feet. The rain outside intensified until water hammered against the giant showroom windows hard enough to blur the view of the dealership lot into streaks of silver and gray. Inside, nobody seemed to breathe anymore. Travis Cole stared at Vanessa with the tight expression of a man struggling to maintain authority in a room that was slowly slipping away from him. One of the security guards shifted awkwardly near the front doors, uncertain whether he was supposed to remove someone or simply stand there while the tension kept building. Vanessa remained beside the white SUV, one hand resting lightly against the polished door handle. Calm. Still. The exact opposite of everyone else in the room. Travis finally let out a dry laugh that sounded more forced than confident. This is ridiculous, he said sharply. You walk in here dressed like that, disrupt paying customers, insult management, and now you want to lecture my staff. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. Your staff? She asked softly. The question hit harder than the words themselves. Travis ignored it. You have no idea how difficult it is to run a luxury dealership, he continued. People expect a certain environment when they spend six figures on vehicles. Marcus Reed lowered his eyes again, shame creeping back into his face despite Vanessa standing beside him. His daughter stayed close against her mother's side now, no longer looking at the SUV at all. Harold Bennett quietly pushed his cleaning cart farther against the wall, trying to disappear from the situation entirely. Emily looked trapped behind the reception desk, fingers trembling slightly around her tablet. Vanessa slowly looked around the showroom once more. The bright advertisements glowing on digital screens promised trust, excellence, family, integrity. Every smiling face in those commercials looked perfect beneath warm golden lighting. Yet standing under the cold white lights of the actual dealership felt nothing like the promises hanging on the walls. You are right about one thing, Vanessa said quietly. Environment matters. Travis folded his arms tightly. Then maybe you finally understand why this conversation needs to end. Vanessa nodded once. I do. For one brief second, Travis almost looked relieved. Then Vanessa reached into the pocket of her hoodie. Several employees exchanged confused glances. She pulled out a slim black phone and calmly unlocked the screen while rainwater rolled down the towering glass walls behind her. The reflection of the storm flickered across the marble floor like moving shadows. Travis smirked faintly. Going to leave a bad review? A few nervous chuckles escaped from nearby salesmen. Vanessa ignored them completely. She pressed one button and lifted the phone to her ear. Angela, she said calmly. The room grew quieter immediately. I need the regional audit team at Dallas North immediately. Travis's smirk disappeared. Vanessa continued without raising her voice. Yes. Full staff presence required. Bring legal and compliance. Emily's eyes widened instantly. One finance manager near the offices straightened so quickly his chair rolled backward against the glass wall behind him. Travis stared at Vanessa now, confusion finally overtaking arrogance. Who exactly do you think you are? He asked. Vanessa lowered the phone slowly but did not answer right away. Instead, she looked toward Harold. The old janitor froze slightly beneath her gaze. How long have you worked here? She asked gently. Harold blinked in surprise. 12 years, he answered quietly. Vanessa nodded once. And when was the last time somebody from management asked if you were doing all right? Harold opened his mouth slightly, then closed it again. The silence answered for him. Travis stepped forward, his patience finally cracking around the edges. That is enough, he snapped. Security, escort her out now. One guard hesitated. The other glanced nervously toward Vanessa's phone, still glowing in her hand. Nobody moved. Outside, lightning flashed faintly across the dark Texas sky, illuminating the showroom in cold white light for half a second before fading again. And standing there between the luxury vehicles and polished marble floors, Vanessa Brooks watched something she had seen many times before in boardrooms, courtrooms, and million-dollar negotiations. The exact moment confidence began turning into fear. The showroom no longer sounded the same after Vanessa made that phone call. The low background jazz still drifted through the ceiling speakers, and rain still battered the glass outside, but underneath it all sat a new silence. Tense, nervous, like every person inside the building suddenly realized they might already be standing inside a memory they would regret later. Travis Cole loosened his jaw slowly, though the confidence he wore like part of his tailored suit had begun slipping in small pieces. One salesman quietly walked away toward the break room without looking at anyone. Another pretended to reorganize brochures that did not need organizing. Emily remained frozen behind the reception desk, staring at Vanessa now with growing realization. Marcus Reed stood beside his family, uncertain whether to leave or stay, caught between humiliation and confusion. His daughter leaned sleepily against his arm, her light-up sneakers blinking softly every few seconds against the marble floor. Harold Bennett slowly pushed his mop bucket toward the side hallway again, trying to return to work even though his hands no longer moved with the same rhythm as before. Vanessa noticed it immediately. The old man's shoulders looked heavier now, not because of age, but because years of quiet disappointment had settled there like dust nobody bothered cleaning. Vanessa stepped away from the SUV and walked slowly toward the long corridor near the service offices. The bright showroom lights faded into softer fluorescent reflections along the hallway walls. Her sneakers squeaked faintly against the tile, while the distant sound of rain echoed through the building's steel frame. Nobody stopped her this time. Nobody spoke at all. Harold reached the hallway corner just as Vanessa approached. He bent slowly to adjust the caution sign near a damp patch of floor, but the edge of her hoodie brushed against his cart accidentally. Something clipped to the inside pocket slipped loose and fell softly onto the tile between them. Harold instinctively bent down first. I got it, he murmured politely. But when he turned the object over in his weathered hand, he froze completely. The fluorescent lights reflected sharply across the black and silver badge now resting in his palm. Executive access. Corporate level clearance. Dallas North Automotive Group. Harold's eyes lifted slowly toward Vanessa. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. Rainwater rolled down the narrow hallway windows beside them, while distant thunder hummed low across the city outside. Harold looked back at the badge one more time, then at Vanessa's face. And suddenly the calmness. The confidence. The way she observed everything instead of reacting to it. It all made sense at once. His mouth parted slightly. Oh, he whispered under his breath. Vanessa gently took the badge back and clipped it inside her pocket again. Thank you, she said softly. Harold stared at her another second before lowering his eyes. I am sorry for how they treated you, he said quietly. Vanessa shook her head once. You treated me fine. The old janitor swallowed hard. This place was different years ago, he admitted. People used to come in smiling. Families stayed after buying cars just to talk. Managers knew employees by name. He glanced back toward the glowing showroom floor in the distance. Now everybody just looks tired. Vanessa followed his gaze silently. Even from the hallway, she could still see Travis standing rigid near the reception desk, pretending control had not already slipped through his fingers. Employees whispered in corners now. Phones quietly disappeared into pockets. Smiles had vanished entirely. The storm outside darkened the glass walls until the dealership looked less like a luxury showroom and more like a stage moments before the curtain finally dropped. Harold cleared his throat carefully. "You are really from corporate?" Vanessa looked at him calmly. "I built this company," she replied. The words were quiet, barely above a whisper, but they hit Harold harder than thunder. His tired eyes widened slowly while the fluorescent hallway lights reflected across the wet marble floor between them. And for the first time that entire afternoon, Vanessa Brooks allowed herself a small glimpse of sadness beneath the control. Because standing there beside an exhausted janitor who still apologized for other people's cruelty, she realized the worst damage inside the dealership was not the discrimination. It was how normal everyone had allowed it to become. By the time Vanessa and Harold stepped back toward the showroom, the atmosphere inside the dealership had completely changed. The laughter was gone. So was the casual arrogance that had filled the building only 20 minutes earlier. Rain hammered the glass walls harder now, turning the outside world into a blur of headlights and water while thunder rolled low above the city. Employees stood in uneasy clusters pretending to work while quietly watching the front entrance every few seconds. Travis Cole remained near the reception desk, though the confidence in his posture looked forced now, like a man wearing a suit tailored for someone else. Then the front doors opened. 3 people entered together wearing dark raincoats with corporate badges clipped visibly near their collars. Behind them came a 4th person carrying a silver laptop case and a thick black binder. The regional audit team. Every employee in the showroom went silent at once. One salesman actually muttered a curse under his breath before quickly looking away. Emily's eyes widened immediately. Marcus Reed tightened his arm around his wife protectively, while his daughter stared curiously at the strangers walking across the marble floor. The lead auditor, Angela Whitmore, removed her rain-speckled coat calmly and scanned the room with sharp professional eyes. "Good afternoon," she said evenly. "This dealership is now under immediate internal review." Travis forced a strained smile and stepped forward quickly. "There must be some misunderstanding," he began. "I can explain whatever complaint was made." Angela did not even look at him. Instead, she turned directly toward Vanessa, standing quietly near the corridor entrance beside Harold Bennett. The moment Angela lowered her head respectfully and said, "Good afternoon, Ms. Brooks," the entire room froze. Completely. Utterly. One salesman dropped a set of keys onto the floor. Emily's hand flew over her mouth. Marcus Reed blinked in stunned confusion while his wife stared at Vanessa like she had stopped recognizing reality itself. Harold lowered his eyes slowly, almost emotional now despite already knowing the truth. Travis did not move at all. He just stared. Vanessa stepped forward calmly, finally removing the faded baseball cap from her hoodie pocket. The bright showroom lights reflected softly against her dark curls as she looked across the room she had spent the entire afternoon observing in silence. "This dealership has received 38 discrimination complaints in 11 months, she said quietly. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody dared. Customer retention has collapsed. Employee turnover has doubled. Community trust has deteriorated." Each word landed like another crack spreading through already broken glass. Vanessa looked directly at Travis now. "And after today, I understand exactly why." Travis's face had gone pale beneath the showroom lighting. "Ms. Brooks," he stammered carefully. "If I had known who you were," Vanessa cut him off softly. "That is the problem." Silence swallowed the room again. Rainwater rolled slowly down the massive glass walls while reflections from emergency lightning flickered across the polished vehicles surrounding them. Vanessa turned toward Angela. "Play the footage." The auditor opened the silver laptop immediately. Seconds later, security video appeared across the giant digital display screens hanging above the showroom floor. Every conversation, every smirk, every ignored customer, Every humiliating comment replayed beneath the bright dealership logo hanging from the ceiling. The room watched itself become ugly in real time. Marcus Reed lowered his eyes again, while his wife quietly held their daughter closer. Emily looked physically sick watching the footage replay overhead. One salesman slowly sank into a chair near the finance office without saying a word. Travis stood completely still, his reflection trapped in the giant showroom screens beside the very behavior he had normalized for years. Vanessa watched him carefully, not with anger. Worse, disappointment. Luxury is not leather seats and marble floors, she said quietly. It is how people feel when they walk through your doors. Nobody spoke. Nobody even shifted. Outside, thunder rolled once more across the dark Texas sky, while inside the dealership, the illusion of power finally collapsed beneath the weight of truth. No one spoke after the footage ended. The giant showroom screens faded back to the dealership logo, but the damage remained hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. Rain continued rolling down the glass walls outside, softening the city lights beyond the lot into blurry streaks of gold and white. Inside, every polished surface suddenly felt colder. Travis Cole stood near the reception desk with his hands clasped tightly in front of him, though the control he spent years building around himself had completely disappeared. Several employees avoided looking at him now. Others stared silently at the floor, finally forced to sit inside the reality they had helped create. Vanessa Brooks stepped slowly toward the center of the showroom, while Angela Whitmore handed her the thick black binder from the audit team. The sound of her footsteps echoed softly through the enormous room. Calm, measured, final. Marcus Reed and his family remained near the white SUV, still uncertain whether they should stay or quietly disappear before things became more uncomfortable. But Vanessa looked directly toward them first. "Mr. Reed," she said gently. Marcus straightened immediately. "Yes, ma'am." Vanessa nodded toward the Aspen Touring Edition beside him. "If your family still wants to test drive the vehicle after today, the dealership will personally honor your original financing approval with adjusted loyalty incentives." Marcus stared at her speechless for a second. His wife blinked rapidly as emotion finally broke through the humiliation she had spent all afternoon hiding. Even their daughter looked confused by the sudden kindness replacing the tension in the room. "You mean that?" Marcus asked quietly. Vanessa gave him a small nod. "I do." The little girl smiled for the first time since entering the dealership. The sight of it softened something in the room immediately. Then Vanessa turned back toward the employees. The softness disappeared. Angela opened the binder beside her while another auditor quietly distributed envelopes across the reception desk. The sound of paper sliding against marble seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. Travis's breathing visibly slowed. He already knew. Vanessa looked at him directly. "Travis Cole," she said evenly, "effective immediately, your employment with Dallas North Automotive Group has been terminated." The words landed without anger, without yelling. Somehow that made them heavier. Travis swallowed hard. "Ms. Brooks, please," he said carefully. "I built this dealership." Vanessa held his gaze steadily. "No," she replied softly. "People like Harold built this dealership. Employees who stayed loyal while management forgot what dignity looked like." Harold Bennett lowered his eyes immediately, stunned to even hear his name spoken aloud in the center of the showroom. Vanessa continued. "You only inherited their work." Nobody moved. Nobody defended Travis. One by one, additional termination envelopes were handed to employees directly involved in discriminatory complaints and unethical sales practices. The blonde salesman near the coffee station went pale when Angela called his name. Another finance officer quietly removed his dealership badge without argument. The illusion of untouchable power disappeared faster than anyone imagined. Emily Carter stood frozen behind the reception desk until Vanessa finally turned toward her. "Emily." Her voice trembled slightly. "Yes, ma'am." Vanessa walked closer. "You spoke up when nobody else would." Emily looked down immediately. "I should have done more." Vanessa nodded gently. "Maybe. But kindness still counts even when it stands alone." Emily's eyes filled instantly, though she quickly blinked the tears away. Vanessa handed her a smaller envelope personally. "Assistant Customer Relations Manager," she said quietly. Emily stared at the paper in disbelief. Near the hallway entrance, Harold still stood beside his old mop bucket, looking overwhelmed by everything unfolding around him. Vanessa glanced toward him next. "And Harold Bennett," she said, "if you are willing, corporate would like your help rebuilding employee culture here." Harold blinked rapidly. "Me?" Vanessa smiled faintly. "You remembered how people are supposed to feel inside this building. That matters more than sales numbers." Outside, the rain finally began slowing against the giant showroom windows. The storm was passing, and beneath the soft white lights reflecting across polished marble and silent luxury vehicles, the dealership no longer felt like a monument to status. For the first time in years, it felt human again. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the dealership windows in long golden streaks, washing away the gray shadows left behind by the storm. The marble floors looked different in daylight, softer somehow, less cold. Outside, rows of freshly cleaned SUVs glimmered beneath the bright Texas sky, while water still clung to the edges of the lot in shallow silver puddles. Inside, the building felt unusually quiet, but not tense like the day before. Calm. The kind of calm that comes after something broken finally stops pretending to be whole. Harold Bennett arrived 15 minutes early like he always did. His old pickup truck rattled softly as he parked near the service entrance beside a row of luxury vehicles worth more than his house. He sat there for a moment with both hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the dealership logo reflecting sunlight above the glass entrance. 12 years. 12 years of mopping floors before sunrise, fixing leaks nobody else noticed, and learning how invisible a person could become inside expensive places. But this morning felt different. When Harold walked through the service hallway carrying his worn thermos, several employees looked up and actually greeted him. Not politely, not out of fear, genuinely. He paused slightly each time, like he was still getting used to hearing his own name spoken with respect. Near the reception desk, Emily Carter adjusted a small framed sign that now read Customer Relations Office. Her new blazer still looked unfamiliar on her shoulders, but the nervousness in her eyes had softened overnight into quiet determination. She noticed Harold immediately and smiled. "Morning, Mr. Bennett." Harold blinked once before smiling back. "Morning, Miss Carter." The sound of laughter drifted lightly from the customer lounge, where fresh coffee brewed beside trays of pastries. A young salesman held the door open for an elderly couple entering from the parking lot. Another employee carried balloons toward the showroom because a family was picking up their new vehicle that afternoon. Small things. Ordinary things. Yet somehow the building finally felt alive instead of staged. Then the front doors opened again. Marcus Reed walked in beside his wife and daughter dressed in her bright pink rain boots despite the clear weather outside. The little girl immediately spotted the white Aspen Touring Edition waiting near the center display platform with a giant silver bow stretched across the hood. Her mouth fell open. "Daddy," she whispered excitedly. "It is ours." Marcus looked stunned all over again. Emily walked toward them warmly. "Miss Brooks wanted to make sure your pickup experience felt a little better than yesterday." The little girl ran carefully toward the SUV, her boots blinking against the polished floor with every excited step. Her laughter echoed lightly through the showroom, bright enough to make several employees smile without thinking. Harold watched quietly from the hallway entrance, his eyes lingering on the family for a long moment. Then he noticed Vanessa Brooks standing near the second-floor glass office overlooking the showroom below. She stood alone with her hands resting lightly against the railing, sunlight reflecting softly across the dark sleeves of her blazer. No spotlight, no speech, just silence. Their eyes met briefly across the showroom floor. Harold gave a small, respectful nod. Vanessa returned it almost imperceptibly. Down below, Marcus carefully opened the SUV door for his daughter while his wife wiped away tears she could no longer hide. Emily laughed softly beside them as she explained the new features inside the vehicle. Employees moved naturally around customers now, not with forced smiles or rehearsed charm, but with attention that finally felt human. Vanessa looked across the dealership one last time. The polished marble still gleamed. The luxury vehicles still sparkled beneath the lights. But now something warmer lived underneath all of it. Respect. Dignity. The things money alone could never buy. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher over Dallas while inside the dealership, for the first time in years, nobody looked invisible anymore.